welcome you to another edition of Soulivity Live. Hey, my sister, how are you?
It's wine, right? Yeah. we might need some more wine for this.
So, let's get this party started, y'all. Hey, my sister, mademoiselle.
That is the most amazing introduction I have ever heard.
Oh. Of myself and Madison, Brian Wesley Johnson. Thank you for joining us on Saturday morning. You a life full of passion, purpose, and high quality living. See you next time. Bye. Hello and welcome to another edition of Soulivity Live, everyone. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I am so glad you joined us because you picked the perfect moment to get inspired. And we have a fantastic show. We are speaking with Dr. Tonya Matthews, the Chief Executive Officer for the new International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. We're honored to talk to her about her life, her journey to success, and her new role as CEO of this amazing museum. But before we begin, I want to remind you about our next exciting Truth and Power series event with partner Beyond Words Publishing. On next Saturday, April 24th, we are holding a celebration in honor of Earth Day. We'll talk about how we can be even more connected to our planet and how that connection creates better outcomes for everyone. And we want you to watch this space, as we will be making announcements of our phenomenal panelists very soon. Now, you can save the date by going to our YouTube channel, where you can also watch replays of all of our wonderful Soulivity shows. So let's get to today's show, though. The International African American Museum found the final piece as it puts together a global project that will change the landscape of African American history and its curation. And the woman chosen as its new CEO, Dr. Tonya Matthews, is an experienced executive, thought leader, and educator with proven track records in organizational leadership, strategic planning, diversity and inclusion, program development, and project management. And chosen well, I would say, Dr. Matthews has a long history of creating sustainable organizations. In 2013, she moved to Detroit to serve as inaugural president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center, transforming the 80,000 square foot facility from the former locally respected Detroit Science Center into an active hands-on learning center with a 52 county statewide footprint and state-of-the-art technology. Before that, she served as acting director of inclusion for the American Alliance of Museums, directing the launch of Facing Change, a national initiative to diversify museum boards across the country with founding support from the Walton, Mellon, and Ford Foundations. And she is the founder of the STEManista Project, a groundbreaking initiative that inspires middle school girls to consider tools and careers in STEM. With its innovative design and technology, the initiative works with community partners to open access to over 1,000 hours of STEM experiences for participants each year. As you can see, Dr. Matthews has dedicated her life and career to the pursuit of expanding the opportunities for success and excellence for a more inclusive and diverse society. And so it is with great pleasure that I welcome Dr. Tonya Matthews to Soulivity Live. Hey, Tonya. Hey, Dr. Tonya, how are you?
I am good, Brian. How are you?
Oh, man, I am fantastic, and even more fantastic now because, as we were talking offline, I have been so excited about this interview. I am so impressed. You have done so much for our communities, and you continue to do more each and every day. So I'm just as happy as I can be. Everybody, I want to remind you that, hey, this is an interactive discussion. So if you have any questions or comments for us during this whole interaction, please post them to our live chats, and we're going to get to them as soon as we can. Okay. All right. So we were talking offline, and I want people, Dr. Matthews, Dr. Tonya, to get to know you a little bit better. I'm sure that there's people in your circles that know you and know everything that you've kind of done and achieved, but I want our audience to really understand this arc of your life and journey. And so I want to go back to your beginnings, which is actually where we're based in Washington, D.C., right? You were born and raised here. So tell us a little bit about your life back then, and your wonderful mother, because we got to do shouts out to mom. Always, right?
Always. Well, absolutely. Well, first of all, of course, thank you for having me and for that amazing introduction. I'm the final piece of a global strategy. I'm gonna steal that. It's amazing. And yeah, so I know that you too are global with the work you're doing now with Soulivity, but I am born where you are now hubbed in Washington, D.C. proper in Northeast, over there by the shrimp boat for the veterans out there, that section of town. I'm the oldest of four. So as my brothers and sisters came along, my mom and dad moved us into Prince George's County, PG County, Maryland. First in that Oxon Hill area, then we moved a little bit north in that sort of Largo, Landover area, which is where my mother still is, and what I consider now, my second family home. My brothers and sisters are scattered, I think, around the region as well. I think, growing up, it was very, very interesting. I mean, when you're a kid and you've got family, that's what you know. Right. Yeah. So, but I was aware of some things, like I was somehow aware that public schools might need to do a little bit better. That was mostly because, my family wasn't rich, but decided to scrape together funds to keep us in Catholic school. Right. And so that was part of that, but also values. It means that now these days you see me, I wear what I want to wear because I grew up in a uniform. So, when you don't have to think about how to impress your classmates in 5th grade, you kind of get a sense of your own fashion identity. Right. In that space. Now, one of my sisters and I are actually very close in age. We're only 13 months apart.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
For a long time, we were one word, Tonya and Rochelle. Tonya Rochelle. It was just one word, Tonya Rochelle, in that space. And so I grew up with her. And then I have a younger brother and a younger sister as well. And, I think it was solid. It was good. It was loving. It was protected. I also had the blessing of having my grandparents for quite some time in my family, which is always very good. I think in terms of that, different roles, different personalities. And I guess as a part of a segue to where we're going, yes, I was born a nerd, not a geek. Love the geeks. Y'all are transplants. I was born, a nerd, right? I liked it. I was good at it. And I had a knack for actually understanding teachers.
Oh, wow.
Teachers, our educators, now we all know more than ever, work really, really hard. But there is still some translation from adult language to kid language.
Right.
But I was always very good at trying to figure out exactly what the teacher was trying to ask me, exactly what they wanted to get out of me. And I think that also kind of helped the learning curve. But yeah, I grew up on the Star Trek and the Star Wars and algebra. That was me.
So did that part actually help you also? Because everything that you're talking about, I mean, I grew up with it too, right? The Trekkie, right? We'll have to have a battle about that, what you know. But
exactly.
Arts and culture were part of all of those things, right? I mean, they're science fiction in its essence is about futurism in terms of culture and how we are living our lives. Is that where some stuff kind of started melding? Did your mom and dad and family have influence in that as well?
So it's really interesting. I think one of the first sort of bona fide acknowledged nerd, so to speak, even though my grandfather, in retrospect, was also on the technical side of things, but he was retired, right? So I wasn't as, attuned to that. My dad was a policeman. He's a 20 plus year DC police veteran. My mom is an English teacher, kind of on that side. And so I think what was fantastic about them is that they had the art of encouraging their children and sort of whatever it was. So they were not afraid that I was perhaps leaning towards things that they were unfamiliar with.
Okay.
In that kind of thing. But it's very interesting when you talk about like arts and culture and the mix. And maybe this is a little big, but hashtag representation matters. So everyone knows that quote about Martin Luther King Jr. talking Nichelle Nichols into staying on Star Trek, right?
Yes.
And trying to explain to her, you are so much more than that. Now, I'm a kid. I'm just watching. I'm loving the aliens. I figured out that the Klingons are actually black, but I'm watching the whole thing, right? Watching the whole thing. I wasn't thinking about it right. I wasn't seeing myself in Lieutenant Uhura. I wasn't doing those things. Right. My two favorite shows, though, were Star Trek and Happy Days. Also loved Happy Days, right? Could recite Happy Days and like all this other kind of stuff. And my mother likes to tell this story that one time I knew so much about Happy Days, watched it so much. She says, maybe one day you'll grow up, you can be an actress, you can be on Happy Days. Without missing a beat, my response to that was, wow, that's silly. I can't be on Happy Days. There are no Black people on Happy Days. And I kept it moving. Now, as a kid, for me, I was loved and had enough self-actualization that I didn't feel like that was constraining for me. But as a mother, imagine how painful it was to realize that your child had already begun to segment themselves in the world, had already begun to identify places where we weren't supposed to go. And it didn't bother me, which was the worst. Right. I just, no, Black people on Happy Days. You can't be on Black Happy Days. I wasn't like, yes, I'm going to get on there and integrate Happy Days. I was like, no. Not Happy Days.
Right.
But as I was thinking about this whole math and science thing, I didn't want to necessarily, be an astronaut. I was like, well, I'm going to build a new space lab. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a biomedical engineer and build a new space lab. Probably if Dr. King was right, I never even considered that I didn't belong in that space because of my other favorite show. And as far as I was concerned, they had Black people, Vulcans, Klingons, and good white folk.
Right.
All right, clearly we're going to space. So these kinds of things, I think, do have these sort of subtle, sort of behind the scene messages in the way we think and form what we imagine our future could be.
Wow. That's a great story. And it's so, it's so important on so many different levels, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say racism didn't exist and we're all totally inclusive. It's also important for us to realize that we can choose our life's direction and that it's up to us and what we're going to do and what our choices are going to be. And it's not based upon what someone else's limited experience and awareness is about who you are and what you can do, right?
Yeah.
So important stuff. And as your mom, you were talking about your mom. Of course, your mother's going to be like, well, wondering, I wonder if she really believes that she can't do that because that's a barrier, right? But you didn't take that. Here's this other Star Trek that's like all inclusive.
But it's interesting, and I know we're gonna get into it, but I came though into that other half of my life, the performing, the being on stage, and sort of that kind of thing a little later, and that may have been why. And I think that may have been, moms know everything. Let me just put that in there. And I think she saw that part of me, this ability to, still be myself on like stages and that kind of thing. And I think that's where she was going with that. And as a kid, you don't know it, but you're good at it. You think you know, but you don't really know yet. And so I think it was just very interesting. But even in a more inclusive way of thinking about the conversation, we all make decisions about, okay, that's what we want, how hard to climb. Right. Okay. Like, that takes that much school, that takes that much money, that takes that much time. We're always making these kinds of decisions. And I think what's important to remember, particularly for Black folks, but also people of color, is also in that how hard the climb may be the racism, may be the being the only one, or the bias. It's part of these calculations that we all make in terms of where we want to go. But I think that added weight of this additional calculation, I think is something that, we're just starting to be vocal about, and have conversations. And plus, exposure makes a difference. I think particularly when you're young, you make your imagination based on different things you see. Exactly. Different things you're exposed to, be that people, places, movies, et cetera, et cetera. And this was, back in the day before YouTube could show you anything, right? We had limited opportunities for seeing, whatever. We have kids today who are literally watching us send rockets off to Mars. I was watching Star Trek. Boom. Okay. The journey continues.
Exactly. I mean, the whole like there's the rover that's on Mars right now with the drone flying around. Like, wow. Now I'm going to pivot off of this because you just said something that I didn't know about, and I'm going to pull this thread. So tell me about this creative side that was started to be birthed. That started to be birthed. So whose idea was it? Was it your mom's idea to try to get you engaged in this, or did you see something and you're like, oh, I want to do that?
No, I think it's probably closer to the truth will out. Right. So, I think we are who we are. And so a big part of my life actually is being a writer and a poet, a performing poet, spoken word artist, slam team member, sort of all of those different kinds of things became a really big part and are still a big part of my life. Some people don't actually know that my real name is Dr. Matthews. I got a little moniker out there, which is not going to happen in this conversation right here, because we're going to talk about my CEO dump.
Your secret is safe on this show.
No, it's really not.
I can't promise you after this, but
exactly. Folks will be doing that. But it was very interesting, I think, in terms of blending those things. And, I'm a classic kid, I think, 5 out of 10 of us end up in a band, clarinet, woo, so that kind of thing. But then, acting. And I think one of the things that I got into in terms of like acting and on that side is, particularly when I was in college, I went to Duke University, majority white university. Now, of course, we refer to them as PWI, predominantly white. It was a way of connecting with myself. So we were the kinds of plays that we were doing. I was like, okay, this is great. I'm an engineer, and so we are studying math that we didn't know existed prior to getting on that journey, right? That there's a whole lot of technical stuff. And so, as I was thinking about how I could still do other things, that's kind of where I got into understanding plays and acting, because we would be doing, say, plays and reading things by James Baldwin or Ntozake Shange, sort of all those different kinds of things. So it was really nice, right? And I think eventually I realized what I was doing, but initially it was instinct, right? Instinct. Find yourself, be yourself. Where are you at? In retrospect, I realized it was part of sort of that self-preservation mechanism, right? Sort of balancing sort of these different kinds of things. I have incredible love for all of my alma maters. But at the end of the day, this was a private, expensive, predominantly white institution in the South. And there were moments, a lot of them, which would sort of try to sort of take you off your game, but unbalance you, kind of knock you over. Right. But something's trying to push you to the left, you get a little balance on the right. Something trying to push you forward, get a little balance on the back. And so I think that's what I was doing. And I think in retrospect, I realized that. And so that's the kind of counseling I give to young people these days. But at the time, it was more instinct.
Okay. So it seems like this moment specifically was the beginning of how you were like, okay, I can have all of this. I can balance my loves across the board. Might take some practice. I might have to perfect what that means, but that it is possible, right?
That's a really good question, Brian, because I think that was more like the beginning of me wrestling with the tension of it, right? Because when you start doing that, it's the first time people will start telling you you can't have it all, right? So no one tells you can't have it all until they see you trying to have it all, and then they're trying to be nice and warn you, kind of thing. And so in the beginning, it was definitely a means of survival, right? I was doing it for survival, and then I found the love and I found the passion. But then, it's kind of like trying to date two fellas at the same time. Do I have to choose? So I would have these moments of, wow, if I want to be a great engineer, do I really need to focus? Do I need to focus and get over there, right? And I would have those moments, like, do a little less of the writing, a little less of the poetry, get out the choir, just go over here, focus at engineering. And I found then that my engineering wasn't at the level that I'm used to it being. I just wasn't. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm supposed to be fully on the other side. Okay. Let's understand the engineering is a means to an end. It's not my end. And I would really put a lot of effort into the poetry and the writing and the arts and just focus over there. Found out wasn't quite as good on the poetry and the arts when I was doing that focus. And that's when I actually realized this was not exactly about me having it all. This was actually about me acknowledging all parts of myself and that they worked in synergy. And while I was free to focus on any part I wanted, they were stronger together. It was more like a weaving. And I don't write poems about math. And and I don't get poetic with my engineering kind of thing, but they're still there. There's some kind of intertwining, interweaving that I need to allow all parts of my brain to sort of fire at the same time in order for me to achieve the standards on each of those sides.
Well, but you're the living example of what educators have been trying to say for a long time, including my own parents who are both educators. And that is that the fine arts and learning about culture is not a bolt-on to education. Like, okay, we're going to learn all this science stuff in English and literature and math and, technology, whatever it's going to be. And then we're going to bolt this fine arts program onto that. And that's just a nice to have. And it's like, no, what we know is that a child has to have this holistic education, and that as you learn more about music or painting or arts and craft or sculpture or whatever it's going to be, it actually helps you on the other end of the spectrum, where you become better at science and understanding the concepts, better at math, understanding those concepts, and being able to execute and think about, how am I going to apply this? Right? Yeah. So that's beautiful. I mean, that's beautiful. Do you remember when, or are you still trying to find a sweet spot? I mean, do you remember when, or are you still like juggling?
You know what? It's interesting. I don't know if there is I think there are sweet spots for different moments.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I know we're about to get into this in the next segment, but I think it fits still in that same art of code switching.
Okay.
There are different parts of me that I bring to different tables at different times. It's like tools in a toolbox.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I know there's a lot of tension, particularly when I talk to younger folks. Why can't I bring my entire self? Because that's not that kind of party right there. Why are you trying to bring all of you? First of all, they don't deserve all of you. So let's start there.
Right.
Second of all, you have clothes that you wear when you're working out, clothes you wear at the club, clothes you wear at work, clothes you wear at church.
Right.
And I think being able to acknowledge and don those different parts of myself and still understand that that's authentically me. I have this thing about authenticity.
Right.
And so getting to the point where I understood that all of these parts of me were authentic, and we're more like a team. We're like a team in terms of sort of letting folks come together. Although it's very funny, there may be some times when I think I'm in one space. Now I lead museums and that kind of thing. My staff will say to me on a regular basis, "You were such an engineer, Dr. Matthews." So I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was in my arts and culture side." Sort of that kind of thing.
I'm an engineer for the next 20 minutes, and then I'm going to switch over to my mathematician side.
Exactly. But it works. It is a weaving. It is a combined skill set. And I think in particular, as I have gone into leadership, doesn't matter what kind of company you're leading. It could be arts and culture, it could be engineering, it could be science, it could be university. It is actually your humanity that shows up first. Right. And the rest of that skill set is what you need powering behind the scenes. But so I think that has been very, very helpful as I now understand that, part of my occupation really is sort of leadership. And it's both of those, like the leader in me, the engineering side helps me with the strategy, the arts and culture side helps me with the humanity and the team building and the team leading. And so I've been very blessed to have been working with both sides of that equation my entire life, as opposed to getting into these roles and then being like, okay, we need to lift up and understand what strategy skill set looks like, or we need to lift up and understand what this EQ thing is. Just because of my different loves and passions, I've been dabbling in both of those areas. And hindsight is all kinds of 2020 in terms of understanding how that plays out now.
Wow. Well, I want to end this segment with talking a little bit about the STEManista project.
Oh, yes. So the STEManista project, that's my baby. That's my baby.
I could not. I had to talk about this because it is so amazing. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about. I've got some images showing of people about the STEManista project and that kind of thing, so people can kind of look about it.
Yeah, so this was a project to attract and engage young girls to think about their careers in STEM, or how they could use tools in STEM. And I am a product of conversations like that. And I think one of the things we have to remember is deliberately including someone is not at all about excluding anyone else. And when you're dealing with a community who have been told no, you can't just open the door and start saying yes. You literally then have to do an invitation, right? If the door was once closed, you can't just open it. Now you have to invite. So it was part of that, bringing them together. We incorporated role models, of global role model database, only because yay, the internet. We thought we were just going to start in Michigan, but folks in Michigan got friends all over the world, particularly since we are the home to many powerfully global companies. And so that started to reach in many ways. I created that program while I was the president and CEO at the Michigan Science Center. And I think the analogy of it being my baby is really appropriate because, she's just doing her own thing now. So if you want to find out more about the project, the Michigan Science Center is indeed her home. And sort of that's where she sits. And my work now, sort of the next generation, I refer to as STEManista Rising. Right. So now I'm thinking about STEManista Rising, thinking about older women, early career, even myself. In that space and what our role is.
Wow, that's cool because again, you're talking about this arc, right? Just it kind of mirrors your own, where you give the support to young girls, and then the support continues into their young adulthood, and then beyond, and then they can give back, right? And then you have this circle of support. So I wanted everybody had to make sure we talked about that specific initiative because it is so necessary. It's so important. Specifically, there's a deficit of women in STEM sciences that needs to be filled. And here's a beautiful way for that process to undertake so that deficit can be filled. So thank you for
and
that.
As a final note on that, it's not just that we need more women in STEM because, we need more women in STEM because we've been excluding them. It's that we need more women in STEM because groupthink is the death of innovation. And anytime you are keeping anyone out, your product is a 9. And we're now in a world where all of our innovation requires a 10. We've got problems to solve, so we need everyone at the table.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Listen, we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
But when we come back, we're going to talk about your new role at the
Okay.
amazing International African American Museum. We're going to talk a little bit about, how did this come about and your vision, and what's in store. What can we be in store, in terms of this amazing new facility? So everybody, we're going to take a short pause. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame, living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
We're back with our very special guest, Dr. Tonya Matthews, the new CEO for the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. This is an important project. It's a very important project. I mean, what is it now? 5 years ago, the Smithsonian National Museum for African American History and Culture opened its doors here in Washington, D.C., your hometown, my new home. And an important step, but there needs to be more. And here's an example of another important step in embracing all of American history. What does this mean to you personally? I mean, I'm going to get into how this all came about, but I want to do a back into that. What does it mean for you as an African American woman leading the charge in building a new facility on sacred ground?
I think it's interesting. Like, even when I say, you can see me, right? That there's a breath. And I think there's a moment, it's not just, I think, being an African American woman, it's being an African American woman who considers herself in the work, right?
Okay.
In the process. One of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten is, "Have you met her? She good for the culture." I was like, "Oh, good for the culture."
Like, oh,
kind of thing. I mean, I have been given the opportunity and the skill set to walk in different circles.
Okay.
Right. And to be a bridge sometimes, a translator sometimes. I have spent the majority of my career in white institutions, at being that bridge, being that community connector. So then there's my job.
Right.
And then there's my job in terms of that. And I found myself taking on roles, around being the de facto diversity officer and being the collaborator, being the first person to add diversity to this group and that group. And I've enjoyed that work. And I actually have been deliberate about that work. It's not so much a pressure point for me. It's a point of privilege being at the table. And so to take this step into a space where this is the work, right? This is the job. I mean, I think all of the jobs that I've had and the institutions I've had the opportunity to lead, it's always been big, right? It's always been, make your grandmother proud, make your daddy smile category. But this feels important. I think really important. And I also think that it would have always been important in any time.
Right.
But clearly this time right now for my country, God bless America. Woof. listen, we're having a moment. We
Yes.
are having a moment.
Yes, we are.
And we cannot let this moment pass, right? You could duck and cover, but why? Why? And so to be leading this institution when we are having these conversations out loud with each other across aisles, there's so much responsibility. There's so many ways to get this right. There's so many ways to get this wrong. And so I'm excited. I'm compelled. And I am humbled to know that really what I am doing is stewarding a conversation that has the potential of dismantling institutionalized racism on a global scale. And I might settle for just being able to disrupt it. But who knows? I always aim high.
Well, you got to break through, right? You got to break the wall, break through the glass, and then clean out the rest of the frame, or knock down and cart the stuff away. So we will lead, we will come behind you. And I always like to say to everyone, specifically with these types of organizations, right? This is American history. Yes, it focuses on the African American experience, right? But it's history that everyone needs to know and embody, because it's part of the fabric of how everything in this country was built. And so this is just not a museum for Black folks. It's a museum for everybody, and for everybody to go and enjoy and take in the knowledge and the spirit and the soul of our ancestors. What's your vision? I mean, at a high level, what's your vision for the museum itself?
Well, I would say, at a high level, it's part of the phrase that I just went into there, which is that, I want the museum to be a platform for dismantling institutionalized racism on a global scale. And I think that many of our institutions are pointed in that direction, but there is some advantage to being the international African American museum, where we can legitimately talk about how the American experience has a ricochet effect. So goes America, so goes the world. I think we've seen that in many, many ways recently, but also that many of our roots, many of our foundations have come from outside and then come together in this space to create an amazing space. I want it to be a place where people can grapple with both the horror and the victory of this story. I think one of our biggest challenges is understanding that we must hold the complexity of the African American experience, of this full American experience. It is not either or. It can never be either or. And so, getting people to understand the pain, right, and the horror and how really bad it was. I mean, it was bad. I mean, folks were like, "Oh no, not Django bad, right? This is sort of bad," but there is incredible victory there, like incredible victory. It's kind of like if we do this right and folks go through that first gallery and be like, I don't understand how they're still here. I don't understand how they still get up in the morning. Then you go through that second gallery and like, oh, that's why. Okay. All right. I get that. And then in that last space, it should remind you of yourself. I don't care who you are, whoever you are, it should remind you of yourself. Because like you said, this is about American history. So any American that goes through there, this should remind you of yourself, your people, your home, your roots. And we are international. So when we get our global visitors, I think you should be able to see that there. And I would say lastly, I want us to be a grounding experience. You mentioned we've got now the International African American Museum. We've got this amazing Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. And sure, we get to be in the newspaper, but I guarantee you there's probably one, if not two or three African American or some other ethnic American focused museum in your town or your community, right? And part of it is sometimes when you go and they're about a specific conversation, a specific person, a specific story, you're starting in the middle. So you think it's great and that's good, but you don't understand that it's grand because you don't have the grounding, right? And the history, right? And so I recognize that we have the ability to be one of the grounding experiences in this part of our story. And so I hope that we can accomplish that and help lift the whole ocean of us who are in this space.
I love that. I love that. Let's lift the ocean. Okay. See, I'm going to use that. See, we're going to give to each other. Now, when is the expected open? The premiere?
So we are expected to open in 2022. Okay. Now, then there was a pandemic and it's not over. # keep your mask on. And so, so we've got those kinds of things. And we're also in, like I said, a rapid pace of new information in this story we're trying to tell, right? My country is having a moment. And so we want to be a history museum that speaks to our present, right? So as these things are continuing to happen, they do actually have an impact on the way that we're building our stories and the way that we're telling the story. But it does look like we are still on track for 2022.
Yes. Now, how can we support? Are there volunteer opportunities? Are there charitable donation opportunities that are there?
So I love that question. Thank you. Every CEO loves that question. And I would say, as a long way of answering that, my one of my nieces and I do story time Thursday night. Like, I'm her reading buddy, and we get on Zoom and we read. And we're currently reading Addie, the first one. We just got to that part in the book where the pastor is up there. He's like, everybody has to give. You give your money or you can give your time if you don't have one. So I had a conversation with her about the different ways folks can engage. So one, of course, if you are of means, please consider this a space where you can give those means. I've got sort of a side kind of mental initiative. Once we as in a community had the 1619 project that came out. Of just love the work and the work the sister did with that. And so now I make some of my major donations in the denomination of 1619. Okay. Just, hey, we're here. All right. So thinking about that for those of us who can. We are still also in a phase of engaging with charter members. Okay. So up until the museum actually opens for the public, if you become a member now, you were a charter member of our institution. And I have run into some folks now on the street like, hey, I'm a charter member. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Right? So you know before you know. And there are various levels, all the way, obviously up to 1619 with a whole bunch of zeros after, and $25, right? So you can think about how you can get into that space. But I would also say being attuned to what we're talking about and what's going on. So jump on our mailing list to find out like what we're into, what we're doing. Follow us on Facebook and our other social media platforms, because I don't know if people understand that's not only a way that museums, and of course I am as well, communicates, it's also the way we legitimize ourselves and say, we have this many people who are listening to us and following us and who are engaged in our stories. So just being a follower of our institution is indeed a way to help and support. So, so if you're in a moment, you can't sort of give, sort of financially, please understand that actually just showing up makes a difference. And then, of course, if you are in driving distance, if you are near the great city of Charleston, as we open, as we continue to do more projects, we are going to be looking for more volunteers. We currently have a small core of volunteers who are helping now. As a matter of fact, our volunteers and some of our staff are out today working on the Black Cemetery Restoration Project in Charleston. We got shovels and boots out there to make sure we keep those sacred spaces sacredly well kept. And so, so we've got all those different kinds of things, your time, your membership, your fellowship, and of course your financial contributions. And last but not least, tell everybody, please just go tell everybody, just, let folks know that we're coming, that we're going to be here. Start dropping dimes about your next family reunion, and where you might want to see and where you might want to be.
Okay. Well, we're going to make sure that we have the website and the Instagram handle and the Facebook handle within our chats, so that everybody can go and find out more information about how they can serve. Again, go out there and give, y'all. I mean, life in part is about service.
Yes.
It'll be much more fulfilling, and you'll see results, and that'll expand the opportunities of growth and excellence for everybody, for a more inclusive society. Question: what was the best advice someone has ever given you?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about this as we've been talking, and I'm feeling our ancestors kind of speaking to us silently as we do this interview, and that question popped up, so I had to ask.
Yeah, I think so. For one thing, you don't get to where I am without a lot of advice. Okay, so anybody out there who is watching now knows you gave me advice. If this was not your advice, listen, still important, still back there. I think something that folks have given to me, one way or another, in various ways, it's about sending the best person forward for the conversation. Now, so sometimes it means sending the best part of me forward for the conversation. Sometimes I've been in situations where, I'm leading and I'm like, you hired me to tell you this, and we need to know this, but I understand I'm not the person they can hear, right? And to get out of my own way, and find the person that can be heard and put them in front of me to deliver the message that needs to be delivered. Because it's, if you're in a position of service, it's about you, but it's not about you. Right.
Right.
And so, and honestly, listen, when you work really hard to know what you know and do what you do, and you find out you are doing what you do and people can't hear you or people can't see it, woo, that digs a little bit at the pride, just a little bit at the pride and the work. But getting out of my own way is about me focusing on my end game, right? About focusing on my end game. Is your end game to be heard, or is your end game to move this dial right here? Okay. And so, and I remember getting that, the first time I sort of specifically remember getting that advice, it was actually from a board member. And he was saying it with the utmost respect and actually understanding for what I was going through. And he said, this is not about your incapacity. This is about your ability to generate effective, genuine strategy to get your people where you need them to go. Sort of in terms of that. And so it really helps me be much more comfortable, I think, with that. And it's played out in a lot of different ways in my life.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's helpful. It's helpful.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's the end game? I mean, you do have to think about it. We were talking earlier offline about the balance between, planning for your future and setting goals and that kind of thing, and then living in the moment. And that you have to embody the feeling and the vision of how you want to see your world, but you can't get so hung up on the process of connecting from here to there that you forget the forest from the trees, and you get so rigid that you have to be able to move. And so that's great advice in terms of embodying that, because that will be your guide. I mean, we talked about something that I just said earlier about the way will show you the way.
Oh, yes. I like that. And I think this lesson is about to resurface much more in this new role. And I want to be cautious, right? Because, the conversation we're always getting is, why does the victim always have to explain how they have been victimized, right? Like how many lashes we got to take. That is not what I'm talking about. Sort of in terms of that, it's not really just about taking hits. It's not about letting people take your ideas.
Yeah.
It's not about women/black folks taking a back seat to whoever has stolen their idea this week. It's much more strategic than that. But I think also focusing on your end game is also another way of saying, where does your joy come from? Right. And so part of that is, because I'm focused on my end game, but that is where my joy is coming from. Like every time we take a step closer to that, that's what feeds me. I like to be in front of the camera. I'm good in front of the camera. I'm good as a spokesperson and that kind. I think I enjoy those kinds of things, but they are a means to that end. And I realize that I'm going to have to keep that very much in mind, because in this role, as a speaker, as a proponent, as the head of the International African American Museum that's going to be in these spaces, in these places, we're going to take a few hits. Okay. The better we become at doing what we need to do, the harder folks are going to come for us. And I'm working to prepare myself and my team for that. And so it's going to be more important than ever for me to continue to find joy in the end game,
Right.
as we're in those storms and those kinds of conversations.
Right. Really quickly,
Mhm.
you were recently recognized by Crane Business as one of Michigan's 100 most influential women. Congratulations on that, by the way. I know this
Thank
was a
you.
while ago, but it can always be recognized again.
You sure can.
What are some ideas or a main idea that you want to share with other women about them pursuing their dreams? I mean, what are some of the thoughts that you give the young girls that are part of the STEMinista project, for example, around living their lives and being fulfilled and happy?
Yeah, I think one of the things that award meant to me was that I had created home. Right, which as we're moving from place to place, Detroit, Michigan was the first time I understood that I could have home outside of my home. Right, obviously born in the Washington D.C. area, and I want to contribute, and I want to serve, and I want to be considered part of, and that's what that recognition meant to me. It meant that I had become a solid part of my community and was doing things that the community welcomed, appreciated, valued. And that goes into something that we were having our pre-chat, which is, stay in the moment, live in the moment kind of thing. And in order to find home where you are, as opposed to where you've been, you've got to live in the moment. Right. And so I think part of my advice is literally keep it moving. Ladies and gentlemen, keep it moving. It may, you're interviewing me and I'm telling you my story and we did this and this and this. It seems so organized.
Right.
It seems so planned. I have said the word strategy, I don't know how many times. Let me tell you something. Keep it moving. Keep it moving, because for the most of the big steps that I've made, I have understood the step after I made it. Right. This is all fantastically organized in retrospect. And so I would say, keep it moving. Dreams are living creatures. They morph. You get new information, you tweak the dream just a little bit, right? And being comfortable with that and understanding that if you are getting new information, you come to a crossroads in your life that you have been planning to go left your entire life, but now you got new information like, oh my God, I should go left. Go right now. You don't have any loyalty to left. It was a dream. It morphed. It grew. Keep it moving. And I know there's a lot of conversation right now, particularly in the pandemic, about people feeling stuck. There's no such thing. A particular part or element of your life may be stuck, but there are other parts of it that are moving, and you need to move along with that. Understand these moments, and be present enough to take all of the wisdom, the jewels, the treasures, even the pain, the heartache, the hard learnings in this moment, stick them in your backpack and keep it moving, because you will find out that at the next stop, you needed those things from the last stop, but you may not be able to see that in real time. So I think that's what I've learned, that you just sort of keep it moving. And I'm a planner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an engineer probably for a reason. I probably just came out the womb type A, like, all right. What is the plan for next
Capital
week?
A.
Okay, right. And then I had a good friend, you asked me about advice, but I had a good friend say, I always heard this phrase: if you ever want to make God laugh, make plans. Ooh. So listen, I
got a sense of humor.
God in good humor. Okay. I keep it in good humor, because I'm always making plans. But I have learned that those plans grow and morph as I grow and morph. And I've learned to appreciate that instead of resent that. So my advice is keep it moving.
Oh, thank you. I'm hearing, keep on moving, don't stop. No. Hey, I'm going to listen to that song today. It is so important. You have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Girl, this hour seems like it went by so fast.
It did go by fast.
Would you come back? Like maybe,
I absolutely will.
Yeah, especially around, hopefully before the museum opens, because we want to check on some progress. But even after the museum opens, we want to shine a light on the important things that are happening around our world.
Absolutely.
And this is one of them. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been amazing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Shoot, I feel like we around the barbecue or something.
I know, exactly. Well, I would have to say, I respect your genius, Brian. You said you thought you might be a good interviewer, but okay.
See, this is the love, y'all.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's how you get invited back. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Tonya.
Thank you,
Tonya Matthews, y'all, the new CEO for the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody, we're going to wrap up with reminding you about next Saturday's event, which is the Truth and Power event brought to you by Soulivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing. We're going to be celebrating Earth Day. Don't forget that you can save the date by going to our YouTube channel. And speaking of connections, I want to remind you that you can follow us on all of our social media. You can learn about our upcoming shows and events, as well as our amazing giveaways. And talking about giveaways, you might want to go and check out our Go Shop, which features vendors from across the globe selling inspirational products for your soul. From beauty to books, we've got something for you in the Go Shop. So with all that, I want to once again thank our guest, Dr. Tonya Matthews, for being on the show today. Please be sure to go support this new museum by visiting their website and all of their social media channels. We'll make sure that we have all that information in our chats. And until next time, on behalf of myself and Dr. Matthews, this is Brian Wesley Johnson saying thank you for joining us again, and I'm wishing you a life full of passion, purpose, and high quality living. See you next time. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Soulivity Live.
Hey, my sister, how are you?
This wine, right? we might need some more wine for this.
So let's get this party started, y'all.
Hey, my sister, mademoiselle.
That is the most amazing introduction I have ever heard.
Oh.
Of myself and Madison, Brian Wesley Johnson, thank you for joining us on Saturday morning. A life full of passion, purpose, and high quality living. See you next time.